Super excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Chef J.J. Johnson, coming all the way from New York City. We had the pleasure to work with him a couple of years ago through Stella, but we really wanted to further this conversation about ways that you could grow your business. And so just the growth that he's done with his restaurant concept, FIELDTRIP, and licensing and opening up multiple locations, we thought it could be a great kickoff to really learn how to grow and expand your business in new ways. So without further ado, Chef J.J. Johnson.
How's everybody doing? Can you hear me on this? I got a little lapel mic here, and this is for me. Well, it's a pleasure to be here in Houston. This is I said it was my first time, but it's my second time. I remembered I came out here for a wedding years ago, stayed at the Four Seasons. I couldn't afford to stay there, but my friend worked at the Four Seasons, and she gave me one of those friends and family discounts, and I was here for a wedding. But I need to come back to Houston proper and eat my way through the city and party my way through the city. I heard somebody say, uh-oh. But, you know, anywhere I go, I always try to get as many meals in as I can. So last night I went to eat dinner late night, around like 10:30 at night to hit one dinner. And then I'm going to hit one lunch today before I head out because I can't say I was in Houston without eating. But I'm J.J. Johnson. I'm a James Beard Award-winning chef. TV personality, restaurant and cultural tastemaker. My restaurants that I have are FIELDTRIP, which is a fast casual rice bowl shop. I'm a partner in a jazz club in Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Blue Llama. And I have another fast casual concept called Bankside, which is a southern seafood and chicken concept, and a digital food hall called Wonder. And if you don't know about Wonder, you should look into it. I'm sure they're going to come to Houston soon. They'll probably knock on your door. But they're the fastest growing restaurant concept in America, backed by Mark Laurie, who started Jet.com, who started Diapers.com, who was the CMO of Walmart. And he looked for what he considered the best-in-class chefs and took some of their concepts or developed concepts and put them under one roof. And he's figured out how to serve 30 restaurant concepts out of one kitchen in a 7,000 square foot space. And they have over 40 concepts right now in the Northeast. And I have one concept with them, but other chefs in there are Marcus Samuelson, Bobby Flay, Jose Andres, a bunch of people. FIELDTRIP, we have 4 locations. 3 of them are company owned in New York City, and 1 is a licensee deal with the Atlantis in the Bahamas, which I consider my first licensee deal that I was able to do. And I'll get into that, which really was just basically on networking and talking with the right person. I did that licensee deal with the president of the Atlantis, not with the VP of food and beverage, but with the president of the Atlantis. And Blue Llama is also a licensing deal. It's a jazz club that was there for 5 years. The owner was a big fan of mine, wanted to change the food concept to Afro-Caribbean food. We worked out a deal in a community where most people would say, why are you not in Detroit? Michigan talks to me as a whole, but Ann Arbor being a very transit city with so many people coming in and out of University of Michigan was a way I looked at how to build my brand even more. So it's a little bit about me. My TV show is Just Eats on Clio TV. I'm on my 6th season there. It's a small network within the TV One family. Or Radio One family. I know a lot of you listen to Radio One out here, but within that family. And then I'm going to give you a little bit insight of just my career and how I kind of got started. Before I went to culinary school, I started off in my grandmother's kitchen. Both of my parents are from New York, moved to Pennsylvania to Northeast PA. My Puerto Rican grandmother made cooking really fun. And I thought, well, if cooking was this fun, then I should do this. And then I would go to New York City to my southern grandmother's house, and she made cooking really fun too. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a chef at a young kid. And at 7 years old, I told my parents I was gonna go to culinary school. My mother laughed. She did not want me to be a chef because she said black people have been cooking all their life. But I went to Culinary Institute of America, and I was the worst kid in my class. I wanted to quit. My chefs would say, if your haircuts were as good as your knife cuts, you would be good in life. And I never really knew what that meant then, but now I know what that means, is because when you go to the barber shop, you specifically pick your barber, right? You make sure your cut is the way you want it to be. And food is very similar to that, right? You are very precise. You want to make sure the people working around you reflects who you are. So I went to culinary school, and I put there 2004, 2007. So 2004, I graduated with my associate's degree. I took a year and a little bit off, and I went to Seton Hall University because I promised my mom I would get my bachelor's degree, and that was a waste of money. I went there for a semester, and all I did was talk about food all the time, and every kid on that campus thought I was crazy. The food was terrible in the lunchroom because I came from CIA. The food was amazing. And I worked in Tribeca Grill for my externship, but I was leaving Seton Hall on the train and going back to work at Tribeca Grill on the weekends. And then I left after the semester. I took some time off. I lived at home, which I was never a guy that wanted to live at home because I got to follow my dad's rules. And I worked, and then I went back to culinary school for my bachelor's. And what actually happened there was that when I came back to culinary school, since I'd experienced, the way the professors and chefs were talking to me made way more sense now. I started to understand food different than when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. I started to say, oh, hold on. This is what food cost means? Oh, this is how you build a team? Oh, this is how you build flavor? And I started to be one of the better kids in school at that time. And as you see, like I said, I worked at Skytop Lodge, which was a hotel. I was commuting back and forth from CIA. I was working at Central Vinoteca, which was in Grand Central at the time, which was a fish restaurant. So I would live with my aunts in Harlem. I would work at Central Vinoteca. I would go out in the nighttime with my friends that I met in New York. And I felt like I kept needing to hone my skills. And this was a really important part of my career because when I graduated school, I didn't want a basic line cook job now that I would have gotten with my AOS degree. And I think if you're a business owner now, you're seeing a lot of that, right? Kids are coming out of culinary school. Or if you're in culinary school, you're coming out of culinary school, and you might be really good, and you're saying, I don't want a line cook, I want to be a sous chef. Or I want to be a kitchen manager. And I wind up going into a management and training program at Wegmans. And there's no Wegmans down here, but Wegmans is very similar to Kroger's. And I was in the prepared foods side of that business. And Wegmans was the first grocery chain to do prepared foods. Now, it's the only place I would consider that I got fired from because I didn't want to wear a cut glove because I went to culinary school, right? But I understand now why we're supposed to wear a cut glove. And I was just like, why am I doing this, preparing food and then scooping it and serving it to people? Like, this is cafeteria style food. Now, it's the biggest business of it all, right? But I put my 2 weeks notice in at Wegmans, and the chefs told me, I don't need your 2 weeks, today's your last day. So I think we were both on the same page. But that's a little bit about my career really early on. And then this is when it starts to change. 2010, 2009 and 9, the market started to crash, right? And I was at a restaurant called Central Vinoteca, and that restaurant started to collapse. I watched a restaurant literally go under, people stealing money, right? Because they didn't have money at home. And I found this odd job online for a corporate sous chef position at Morgan Stanley executive dining room. And I'm like, well, what's this? So I go to do a tasting. I go to Morgan Stanley, 1585 Broadway. They say to go to the 41st floor. I go up to the 41st floor, and it's this beautiful kitchen, stainless steel kitchen. Everything is shining. And the chef is from Chanterelle. And I don't know if anybody's been to Chanterelle in New York. It's one of the most epic restaurants in Tribeca. They used to handwrite their menus every day. And I did my tasting, and he hired me for the role. And Zach was great. He literally we change our menu every day at Morgan Stanley. And what we did there is you cook for the MDs. So you were cooking for the managing directors, you cook for the CEO, maybe at their house. We would cook hot and cold lunches. And really, I got to see what the business was about, that food was very secondary, right? Business was first, and food just happened to be on the table. Even if we were cooking with umbilical pork, even if we were getting hindquarters of beef in, even if we were shaving truffles tableside, none of that really mattered to these individuals. They were there to get the business done, and if they got through business, then they ate lunch. And that really helped me as I go forward in my career running a business, because I started to understand how to raise money and talk to folks of that level. But I got the itch to go back into private dining or independent dining, and because Morgan Stanley was operated by Restaurant Associates wouldn't promote me for a role. They kept telling me I wasn't qualified enough, even though I was running a $3 million program at Morgan Stanley. So this was the era of Chopped, right? Chopped started coming out. I was trying out for Chopped. I wasn't getting picked for Chopped. And the executive producer of Chopped said, hey, there's this show coming out on Bravo called Rocco's Dinner Party. You should apply for it. So I applied for Rocco's Dinner Party, and I actually won my episode. I won $10,000, and thanks. And this kind of was a changing point of my career, because then I started to get eyeballs on me. I get this odd email from this gentleman named Alexander Smalls saying, hey, I saw you on Rocco's Dinner Party, and you remind me of my father. I'm like, how do I remind you? I'm a young guy. And do you want to get breakfast on like 120th in Amsterdam? And I live on 107th in Amsterdam. So I'm like, this is really, this place is like really close to my house. There's this guy like following me. But I said, I'm gonna take a chance. I'm gonna email this guy back. And I said, hey, I'll catch breakfast with you. When do you want to get breakfast? And I met with Alexander Smalls. Alexander Smalls is famous opera singer, Grammy Award winner. And he was working on the restaurant, the Cecil, at that time. And he said, I'm working on this project for the Cecil with the famous businessman named Dick Parsons. But before we talk about that, do you want to come to Ghana with me? I was like, I don't even know you, man. He was like, well, I got invited to cook in Ghana, but I don't really want to cook. Do you want to cook? And it'd be 5 months from now, but you got to go through all this paperwork, get your yellow fever shot, get a visa, all this stuff. So I called my mom, tell my mom, I'm going to go to Ghana. Mom was like, with who? You don't know this guy. But I'm a risk taker. If you know a little bit about me, I'm going to take risks in life somewhere, somehow, because without the risk, you don't know if the failure, the reward. So I took this risk, and I go to Ghana for a month. I cook at this restaurant called Villa Monticello, and I went there just to cook American-themed dinners, not realizing I was going to find myself through food, and realizing the smells, the tastes, and everything there would allow me to go back in time to know who I was as a kid. Because when I grew up as a kid, I was just a black American boy. I didn't know I was a kid of the African diaspora, made up of people from certain areas. And at that time, when you started to look for cookbooks or books, there wasn't much. So I used the encyclopedia to help guide me around what is West African food, what does West Africa mean, and especially where I grew up. I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania. Nobody was teaching that. And in that time, that's when I will say I fought for this job to be at the end I was the executive chef for the Cecil, but when I first started I was the CDC, because I never ran a kitchen before that. I was just an executive sous chef or a sous chef. I was not the guy that was running a kitchen. So Alexander and Dick Parsons gave me the first shot in my career, and I remember telling them, hey, if it doesn't work out, you guys can let me go. There's no hard feelings, right? Because I'm a very firm believer that you should have open communication with whoever you're doing a deal with, your landlord, whoever's employing you, especially when you're at that high level. And that was like kind of the first part of my career. But when I was at the Cecil, This was a part when I started to really start to build my brand because they had a PR company. They had to write about a chef. And I remember the PR company saying to me, if there was one thing you could get, JJ, one thing we could get for you, what could it be? I was like, well, if you could get me Forbes 30 under 30, I'll take that, right? And I wind up getting Forbes 30 under 30 because I put it out into the universe. And that literally, thank you. Forbes 30 under 30 was the first part of me, like that opened up a major floodgates. I still talk to all those folks, Randall Lane, Jessica Sibley, who's the CEO of Time Magazine now. I mean, Jessica was there. She was a big champion of mine to get me on that list. And, you know, sometimes you got to put things into the universe so that you can go try to achieve it. It doesn't make you seem cocky. Doesn't mean that you need to humble yourself. Like, if you're not personally fighting for something that you feel rewarded from, nobody else is fighting for you. And yeah, I was, you know, Forbes 30 under 30 was the biggest point of my career. But what happened in that time, Cecil started getting tons of notoriety. Ownership started to fall apart. And I was stuck in the middle. And they wound up closing the Cecil. And then there was Minton's Jazz Club. And then it was time for me to go. And I was stuck because I'm like, I never envisioned that I would do anything else. It was like, we got one of the richest men in the world that fund the restaurant. We have a visionary guy. We should be able to open up multiple Cecils. I mean, we were getting people calling us from Miami, Vegas, to open up Cecils everywhere. They didn't want to do that. People were asking me to do it. I don't own the intellectual property of these businesses. And I was friends with a gentleman named Jerron Smith from Forbes 30 under 30. He was Steph Curry's CMO at the time when he won Forbes 30 under 30. And he said, I tell Steph Curry all the time, when you need help, you call a friend. And I'm friends with a gentleman who used to run Chef's Club in New York City. His name is Aaron, and he would pick the chefs. And I called Aaron. I said, hey, Aaron, I'm leaving the Cecil. Do you think I could come do a residency at Chef's Club? He was like, oh, man, we only do Michelin star chefs. I was like, well, yo, you're my homie. He's like, it's not really about me. It's about ownership. But he's like, we got this thing called Chef's Club Counter. I said, I'll take Chef's Club Counter. I'll do a fast casual concept I'm working on. He's like, nah, we've never done anything in there before. I was like, it's cool. I'll take it. So we do Chef's Club Counter. We put the tickets up for one night. Tickets sell out in like an hour. So now ownership, oh, who's this guy? Oh, you want to do 2 more days? We do 2 more days. They sell out. Within the residency, Chef's Club Counter, the ownership, Stefan, comes to me and goes, hey, do you want to take over Chef's Club for like 3 weeks? I was like, I don't know, man. I'm not really trying to do full service right now. I'm really trying to focus on fast casual. He goes, but have you raised money? I go, nah, I don't. I'm gonna raise it. He's like, well, why don't you cook? And then those people you want to invite to raise money from, they could taste your food. It's like, oh, that's kind of brilliant. So I was at Chef's Club was only supposed to be 3 weeks. It wound up being 3 months. And that's how I was able to raise money for FIELDTRIP, because people were coming in, eating my food, and wondering what was I going to do next. And I did a friends and family round to run FIELDTRIP, which consists of some childhood friends that I didn't know about that had money, some friends that I used to party with in New York City that were married now, that husbands that had money, a gentleman from a young kid from a wealthy family that I met that went to NYU that wanted to invest in me because he loved Harlem. The landlord wound up writing a TI check, tenant improvement check, to help build out the space because it's on an empowerment zone block that they were trying to clean up in Harlem. And it started to fall together. But I never was thinking about doing a full fast casual because I never worked in fast food. I wanted to do something where you would order from the counter, we would bring your number to you, there would still be some types of service. But I wasn't able to raise enough money because you, as a person of color, put a threshold in your mind that you only can achieve this amount. we never say to ourselves like, oh yeah, we're gonna go raise $20 million and actually go tell somebody you're gonna raise $20 million and look at them in their face and say, you're gonna give me $20 million. And if you don't wanna give me $20 million, it's fine, I'm gonna ask you for $20 million and be okay with that inside. When I first started raising money for FIELDTRIP, I raised around $350,000, and I was listening to my friends raising $2 million, $3 million, don't have the amount of accolades I had, was working as like a sous chef in like Michael White's spot. Nobody knew who the person was. I mean, raising $3 million, that's a lot of money for not having any restaurant before. So, but I didn't do that because I didn't think I could do it early on. Then later on, I believed in myself that I could do it, but that was kind of the first phase of FIELDTRIP. And in between that, I did a licensing deal with a operating company to take over a small hotel in a space called the Henry that did extremely well. We turned around this hotel project, but the operating company, they were not good people. And when you're young in your career, you just want to run and take the opportunity. Oh, I got to get this. Let me get this. I need this. And I didn't do my background research on them to know that they weren't good people, that they were laundering money, they were going bankrupt, and they literally just closed the doors. And then I had to get beat up in the media. So it is really important on who you go into business with and do your due diligence. If you're taking money from somebody, they do their due diligence on you. You should also do your due diligence on them. So, building a brand comes from a couple of areas, right? And I have two brands that I'm building. I'm building my personal brand and I'm building FIELDTRIP, and I'm building them simultaneously, right? And I think when you start to build your brand, I look at people that have really strong brands, right? Tyler Perry, really strong brand, right? And the reason why he has a really strong brand is he knows who his people are that will watch his movies, show up to when he talks, right? And that's really important when you're building your brand in a restaurant. Not that when somebody comes to you like, oh man, look, this restaurant, Chipotle is getting 3.2 million over here, right? And then you want to base your numbers on 3.2 million because that's what Chipotle is a big brand, right? Everybody knows Chipotle. Everybody doesn't know our brands. So you need to go to a place that you know your people are. So our first location was in Harlem. I know my cousins were going to walk through the doors. My aunties were going to walk through the doors, which was very important for me, and that they would tell their people to walk through the doors, right? Our next location was Rockefeller Center. For me, it was like, okay, people are trapped. They got to eat lunch regardless, right? They got nowhere to go. But there's a lot of options there. And you need to also know what you're in a space like that. You also need to know what the landlord's going to do with the place, right? Are they going to change the traffic flow? Are they going to how many restaurants are they going to put on there? Are they going to expand the footprint? All these things matter because that will help build your brand. So in Rockefeller Center, we do extremely well with tourists. I say we do okay with office workers. Most people eat sweet green, right? I don't know why. Right? For $23 a bowl, rice bowl. Most people eat New York City pizza, right? You can't fight with that. And most people are going to coffee shops or doing a power lunch. But when tourists come in, tourists from other countries don't eat salads for a meal, right? And they're going to they want something warm and affordable. We consider ourselves an affordable place. But building FIELDTRIP's brand is hard, right? Because typically, if you're scaling a concept, you want to try to go into the same market space for the first 3 to 5 locations because you've built a footprint around a kitchen, a flow of service, right? A size, all that matters. As you start to go into different markets around competition, i.e. I'm going to call it Sweet Green, they got technology, right? They got better flow than you have. Right? They might have better customer service, and now you have to catch up to that. So then that strains your business because you're spending money in areas that you're not ready for yet, i.e. trying to find a tech stack, trying to figure out the flow of business. How do they get people in and out in 3 minutes and you get people out in 6 minutes, right? All these things matter. So when you are trying to scale or build your business, if you have a footprint that works, that you're profitable or break even, try to look for a similar footprint in that next business, because you can just cookie cut what you already have there versus changing the footprint in the style that goes on. And I think here in Houston or Texas is a market, right? If you talk to any real estate person outside of Texas, or you talk to any real estate person in Texas, they will tell you that Texas is a market for scaling, right? Because you can put 70 locations in Texas through the state and not go nowhere else, i.e. Velvet Taco, right? They going to London next. They're not even looking at another state, right? So, but they have a model down packed of where they failed, because they failed in some locations, and where they do well. And they do well in what they call the over 35-year-old that still wants to party. So you're at the bar, right? You leave the bar with your friends, you want to eat, they give you a fun experience, and you can still drink there and you keep going. They can stay open at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? So they figured out their model. I would have never thought about that. And they have, 70 locations. The original founder sold at the 5th location, which is unheard of, but that guy's like hits home runs. Now he has Twin Peaks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Same founder, right? But that person has a model that they know that works, and they know the demographic of folks that he is attracted to that is also attracted to him. So it's really important for you all to think about, if you have a concept now, or 2 concepts, or 3 or 4 locations, in that what works. So I was a big person that I wanted to go what I call the C&D markets that people don't look at, because I want cheaper rent. I don't want to pay over $10,000 a month in rent in New York City, right? But the density might not be there, right? Also, if you're in an uptown area, you might be fighting across the whole density of a whole uptown map. So we opened a location on 114 from Broadway, right next to Columbia University, thinking that we were going to attract Columbia kids. We're wound up splitting our customer, because Columbia kids were already eating at FIELDTRIP in Harlem, just ordering delivery. Now they're just walking in. So now we're pulling from the same base, right? And I'll go back to bigger brands. McDonald's can open in a 10 block by 10 block by 10 block, or a mile by a mile radius, because everybody knows who they are. So don't look at your business from a scalable point. With the big brand, you can learn from them when like tech stacks or things of that nature. But look at some of the smaller brands, or go back in time and look at how those brands got started and see what they did. What was their price point? Did their prices go up or did they go down? How big was the footprint? Were they making money at that time? What part of the town were they in? If you find somebody really comparable. And then, media plays a big role in building a brand if you are able to get on media. I think media right now, food media, is changing. I don't think we should rely on the eaters. We shouldn't rely on if the local newspaper is going to review us. I think we should go back to old school marketing, which is referral business, right? And which is newsletter business, capturing people's data. And also, the new wave is definitely in some type of social media. And if you're paying, let's say you're paying a PR agency $3,000 a month, or let's say you're paying them $10,000 a month, you should talk to them about, hey, I don't want traditional PR. I want you getting me influencers coming through the door. Or maybe you hire a community outreach person that's constantly just hitting influencers, and then you're paying the influencers to come through the door for you, which you can pay somebody $500 to $1,000 depending on who they are, and maybe you get some local kids. There's a lot of universities around here that they can eat for free, and then they post on social media, and you put a value against it. That will grow your business. That's what we're doing at our Columbia University location. We're using the NAIL deals that college kids are getting, but instead, swimmers, polo players, rugby players, soccer players, they're not getting those deals. We're going to them or to the department and saying, hey, we'll give you guys a pot, $1,500 for the month. You post 5 times for us. We don't care what players you send to us. Here's a code. And we've seen a lot of traction from Columbia University athletic department now asking us, will we put our name on the floor? I'm like, no, we don't have that type of money. We put our name on the backboard. We put it on the bottom of tickets. There's so much now because there's a density of folks there. And here you have, in this area, wherever you live, you have a lot. So those are different ways to really, to build a business, but you gotta fail. You gotta know what failure feels like. And what I call it is the yellow brick road. We all have different yellow brick roads. And early on in my career, I would look when I was cooking at the Cecil, and I'd be like, yo, I'm getting all this press. Yo, why is Marcus Samuelson getting all these deals? Just crazy. And then you take a step back, like, yo, Marcus has been in the game for 10 years, 15 years, right? So we get really naive in the situation of the moment and looking at people, of what they're doing, and don't judge your career or your business or what you're gonna do. Once you get on your yellow brick road, trust me, you put the time in, it's gonna come back to you, and you're gonna get licensee deals, you're gonna get management deals, you're gonna get that landlord to call you. And trust me, somebody you talk to today that might be a low-level person is gonna be in a space later on that's gonna call you and be like, hey, I got this great deal for you. I remember when you was grinding, do you want this? So don't put anybody past you. And that's what happened with me and the president of the Atlantis. I went to Bahamas cooking with MasterCard. I met the president. We exchanged numbers. And I invited her to come to New York to eat at Field Trip. And she was like, oh, I'm going to be in New York for a board meeting with Brookfield Place. And at Brookfield Place with Brookfield, I'm going to come there and get a meal before my flight. So she comes. We eat with a couple of her people. She wanted to spend 2 hours with me. When she got back to Bahamas, she wrote me an email saying, we're going to figure out how to get a deal done. So you just never know the time you spend with people, what that's going to do. What else I got here for you? So yeah, and then look, they give me, I only got 5 minutes. You got to start with, I believe you have to start with corporate-owned places, so you got some skin in the game. You don't need a lot of places. I've learned that from the Velvet Taco guys. You can have 5 places and sell to private equity for a lot of money. I didn't even know you could do that. You have to get to 20, 30, 40, 100. You don't have to do all that. You could have 1 location, 2 locations that really do well. Pinky Cole did that, right? She had her 1 location doing over $6 million. She had 1 or 2 other locations, negotiated Danny Meyer down to his ankles, right? Because she knew her value and how she was able to show how much the brand was worth. So that's why corporate-owned locations are good. And then you could take your corporate locations and flip them into licensees, which is similar to franchisees, but I like licensee models more because you can still control them, and you should think about how you can put them into hotels, Vegas, any casinos that are nearby, any international places, and licensee deals will help you with cash flow. You know, Carbone, the brand Carbone didn't just blow up overnight. They had 1 location. They did a deal with the Nets for a privately owned club in the Nets arena called Crown Club. That gave them a ton of money. They went to Vegas, did a licensee deal there, and then it was like everybody started to know the brand. So they built their brand slightly different, but that cash flow started to come in for them to put sauces on in the supermarket. So there's many different ways you can go. It's not just one way. And I say stay scrappy, grit your grits, grit them many different ways, but stay scrappy in the game. Don't just spend money because you got money. You don't need to do that. And really find people that are going to work hard for you. Or if you're going to work for somebody, find somebody that you see that's working really hard because you know that they really want to be in the business. Yeah, and so our next licensee deal with Field Trip is going to be JFK Airport with HMS Host. So airports are a big model. They take a really long time, but I know you could, before you used to be able to, I'm going to say this wrong, but you used to be able to get the ACDEBE certification because big operators in the airport need a minority partner. That's changing under the new administration. I took 2 years to fill mine out. I got approved last week, and the lady was like, hey, I'm really sorry, but this is not going to be worth anything. I'm like, hold on, I spent all this money with you? She's like, yeah, I can't give you your money back. And it's really sad because it really benefits women, because women are the ones that really are the minority partner in airports next to big operators. So if your bid is coming up in the airport, you got city council was here, knock on their doors, they know, and they have a big say of who can get into the airports. But those airports, trust me, those locations are doing 5 to 10 million, some locations doing 20 million. But we're gonna go in JFK, that will hopefully build a brand, that'll bring us to about 5 locations, 2 licensee locations. Any questions?
My name is Justin Johnson. I'm from the Service and Restaurant with my sister Jessica. She's right now. But thank you for this. This was very insightful. I did have a couple questions though. So one, when it starts off with raising money, from the business perspective, where are you getting the numbers from that you need to raise? Oh, thank you. Where are you getting the numbers that you need to raise when it comes to raising money? Like, how do you come to that final number saying, oh, I need 350,000, 20 million, whatever your number is, where are you kind of pulling that from?
I hired a fund manager who was a friend of mine. I think you should hire a fund manager. They'll take a percentage from you, or they'll ask for a little bit of upfront capital. You can go to your bank. They have fund managers that they could give you depending on how much money you're raising. But normally, though, the evaluation will be about how much money does your restaurant do. Let's say it does $2 million a year, and you want to grow it to 10 locations, so that's $20 million, right? And then they'll start to do some mathematical equation on how much equity you're going to give up. What does 1 point equal, right? The one thing that I left out in my Series A, which I wish I would have made my fund manager do, I call it opportunity cost. And opportunity cost weighs way more than the evaluation of what your business actually does. Because once you go to the public and you tell them that you have raised money, and if it's institutional money, you will start getting calls from developers that you never heard of before that want you to put your business inside of these locations because you have they call it legit money. It's not just like some mom and pop or some high net worth person. So that's a phase of how it goes, but I mix it with what do you do now, opportunity costs, overhead, and then that's how much money I need to raise, because I don't want my overhead built into the scalability of the model. So if it costs, let's say, $350,000 to build a location, let's use that, then you know I'm gonna build 10 locations at 3.5 million, right? I got $6.5 million left over. Am I gonna pull from that to pay for staff, corporate staff now that I'm gonna use? Or am I gonna add in some more money into that to pay for corporate staff and give myself a burn rate? Because that's something else that you have to do when you raise money. You have to give yourself a burn rate of how long this cash is gonna stay and when you should start raising again. Because don't think because you losing a 6% or 5% that you are a failure business. You're just trying to get to a point where if you're trying to sell or go public or get to break even, that the money just keeps flowing in. That's the name to the game. Most of us think that in a scalable business, you need to be like this crazy profitable business. No, like Sweet Green is losing 13%. It's publicly out there, right? Shake Shack lost 10% a couple quarters ago. Then they gained it back, right? So we believe, the public has made us, the media has made us believe that a business that is successful is a profitable business. I want to be profitable. I want to be break even. But if you're losing 5 or 6%, you could float that and you could keep raising till you get to a certain point or wherever you want to get to call it success. But that's what I do, and I believe that every founder also, when you raise money, you should skim from the top and not dilute yourself on the skim because you put in money. So whatever you're raising, if you want 2 million back for yourself, you say, hey, I'm raising 20, but I'm taking 2 million for myself because we got here because of me, but I'm not gonna dilute myself because I took that 2 million. And that's where you gotta really find investors that understand that model and how that works.
Thank you. And I did have one more question.
You talked a lot about your culinary journey, about the inspiration in terms of cooking. What part of that journey did you really develop your business? Talk about profitability, the numbers, really just dive into the business side.
That's a good question. I prefer to cook, I prefer to be in the kitchen. When I worked with at the Cecil, Dick Parsons used to let me sit in on their board meetings, and I would listen to how they talked about money. And he would use this phrase like, the bank didn't go out of business because they went in the credit card business. They went out of business because they stopped paying attention to the cash, right? So every morning I wake up, the first thing I do is I look at my bank account, right? I don't care if my accountants are bookkeepers, but the first thing I do, I open up my Chase. I look at Chase. I'm like, yo, did the money hit from Toast? Did the right money hit? Why is that getting deducted, right? And then I just listen to folks. I talk to people. I'm very vulnerable in the space of like, if I don't know, I don't know. But why I hired a fund manager, because I didn't know. And the fund manager is a friend of mine, older black gentleman that was in corporate America. And he really taught me, alongside what I knew with Mr. Parsons from him. But white men, when you raise money, will beat you down. They will tell you how much you are valued. And I didn't realize that in my Series A round, that they just come up with a value in their mind, like, oh, nah, man, you want $5 million? Now you only worth $2 million. They're like, well, how'd you get that? My numbers say I'm worth this. And you have to then be able to go toe-to-toe with that, because they're the ones that are writing the checks, right? And in the black community, Latino community, you know who has the money. You got to go to an athlete. You got to go to a musician, right? There's only a couple hedge fund, private equity guys, 6, 7 of them in the space. We have one from Pendulum, Robbie Robinson. Now he merged with Jay-Z. It's called They merged with the Jay-Z fund. But there's only a couple of them out there that are going to give money. All the lower tier guys, when I say lower tier, like the $5 to $10 million guys, they're not writing checks in restaurants unless you really know who they are. But I've just learned, and I've gotten tired in the space of just seeing people that don't look like me not being able to scale because they don't believe they can scale, or they don't think they can go talk to somebody to get money. And I think in a place like this, Houston, where you guys, in Houston, Texas in general, Atlanta, you see a lot of scalable business, like Slim and Huskies. Those guys are scaling, and they're doing it very differently. They're going in colleges. They're getting rid of stuff in their portfolio to gain more in their portfolio, and they have 30, 40 locations, and nobody talks about them. And it's crazy to me. So, and they don't care. They're like, yeah, we're going to get our money. We're going to get this. We're going to try to be the next Domino's. So talking to folks like that, where you could be vulnerable, but also, you know, I'm constantly hitting folks on LinkedIn. I've talked to the CEO of Kava. I know the Nicholas Jemay and them from Sweet Green. I talk to those guys all the time. So I got for one more question. Anybody else? In the back?
I'm coming.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's so important to hear someone like you say it's important to fail. I happen to be going through a failure right now. I'm actually closing a brick and mortar
I'm
Friday.
sorry to hear that.
And I'm like, oh God. But it's so important to hear it's okay to fail because you learn. And I get that. I do know that you learn. What are some of the best things you've learned from your failures?
I'll tell you this. You have a location that you put in a prominent area. You spend a lot of money on this location, and you're like, the numbers say it's supposed to do good. All my peers are doing good, right? And you hold on to this location because you got so much pride. Because you're like, oh, I'm going to close it. The media's going to write about me, or people going to think I'm a failure. At one point, you got to really look at the numbers, because the numbers don't lie, and say, yo, this ain't working. I don't know why it's not working. All the other ones work, but this one don't work. I'm going to have to figure out how to get out of this and start to work on your exit plan. And that's what I've learned from restaurants. I come from a sports family. My dad used to say the way you get recruited is the way you play. The way the landlord treats you from day one, when you start to go through your lease negotiation, is the way they're going to treat you when you're in the space. And I will never, ever go into business again with Columbia University, because the way they treated me from the beginning and in the middle, because they're such a large organization, they don't talk to each other. They play bully ball, and they know we're small, so they bullied us. and they put us in a bad situation. And in the moment, I should have said, oh, I spent $30,000 here. Hey, I'm going to call the head of leasing, and I'm going to get out. Right? Or I'm going to call my lawyers, and I'm going to spend $10,000 with my lawyers, and I'm going to get out versus spending $200,000 later on to put in a fire alarm, this code don't thing, all these things that they should do to push back on us because they know. So you gotta in business, you gotta put yourself pride to the side and really look at what's working and what's not working, and not thinking like, and for me, you get so, I'm gonna talk for me, you get so hyped that you just have this opportunity that you don't think the next one's gonna come, but there's plenty of other opportunities out there for us. You just gotta be in the right situation. So that's what I've learned, and I learned to treat people the same way you wanna be treated. Even if they treat you not the right way, karma will get them. So.